Welcome to another episode of Professional Builders Secrets. In this episode, I interview Alannah Silva from boxbrownie.com. Alannah and her team are transforming the way builders showcase their projects with high quality 3D renders. These tools not only help your clients visualize their dream homes before they're built, but they also tap into that emotional side of buying decisions, giving you a competitive edge in the market. Listen to the episode to discover how this technology can help you sign more contracts and deliver a better client experience. This episode of Professional Builders Secrets is brought to you by Apparatus Contractor Services. Apparatus provides full scope, end-to-end QuickBooks precision construction accounting and CFO services for residential builders. If you feel like you can't completely trust your weekly and monthly financial reports, or you feel like you're flying blind, Apparatus will rebuild and operate your QuickBooks accounting system and give you precision construction accounting capability you can trust. Learn more at apparatusteam.com or on the APB Rewards partner directory.
A lot of the times I see builders use an exterior render and a floor plan. And that's great because you kind of get to see like a 3D floor plan of everything and you get to see the exterior. And that's really good when you are doing renders on a budget. But then the great thing about it is you can use it with your clients, but you can also use it in marketing as well. And so being able to showcase your expertise online, I think is really vital as well. And how can we actually leverage our technologies without spending too much money to actually make your expertise shine through? And that's what we want to do with renders, is not only showcase the property, but also you as the builder.
Welcome to Professional Builders Secrets, the podcast for building company owners wanting to grow safely and securely. I'm your host, Will Blunt, and today I'm joined by Alannah Silva. Alannah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so stoked to be here. So yeah, thanks, Will.
Yeah, awesome to have you on. I'm really excited to talk about what we're chatting about today, which is 3D virtual renders. But before we dive into the details on that topic, can you let all the listeners know a bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, of course. So my name is Alannah Silva and I have the privilege of working for boxbrownie.com. I am originally from Brisbane, Australia, but I currently live in London, but I'm currently in the States. So my big thing is where in the world am I? And my mom usually keeps up to track with LinkedIn. So that's kind of where she's like, where's work tenure this week? But I guess a little bit about boxbrownie.com. We like to think we're the industry leader in property marketing, which is a big title to have. But basically, we offer cutting edge solutions to real estate and building professionals worldwide. So our innovative solutions really kind of are trying to make it easier for people to have access to high quality editing services to really showcase properties to the fullest potentials. So this could be anything from, in the builder space, from simple image enhancement and iron removals to virtual staging, right up until 3D renders. So anything, whether it's a photo or maybe it hasn't been brought to life, that's kind of what we specialize in. And this is kind of why we connect with so many builders, because we do offer such a range of digital solutions that they can leverage to get high quality marketing, regardless of the stage of the build. So whether it's pre-sale, whether we've started construction, or whether we're post-constructions. So it's an Australian-based company based out of Maroochydore in Australia. I love getting Americans to say Maroochydore. It's like my favorite thing in the entire world because they just have no idea. I meet so many and they're like, where are you from? I'm like, Maroochydore. And they're like, what? So yeah, it's still Australian based. We have about 200,000 clients in about 120 different countries. So it's been really great at trying to getting the word out there. Anywhere in the world can use us, which is, I think, such a bonus for people.
Cool. Good summary. You've also obviously said that a few times to people at conferences and everything.
Yeah, it's usually like I feel like I then kind of disassociate a little bit when I say it because I like just have to hit the key points. But sometimes I'll like subconsciously say it in a different way, and then I'm like, oh no, I'm like my mind's like, wait, what did you say? But yes, we do say it quite a bit. We go to last year we went to about 55 conferences just in the States. This year was only 17. So we do get to connect with people kind of worldwide, which is my favorite part of this job. It's like my dream job because I get paid to go overseas and like hang out with builders, which is great.
Well, we can dive into what Box Brownie does a little bit more later on in the conversation. But what I think what the listeners really care about is what problem are you trying to solve with these 3D renders and the editing software for builders? Like, what is it helping them do?
Yeah, I think it's I do think especially with virtual renders and 3D renders, they've really kind of the importance in the last 5 years. Now it's kind of a must have. I think the problem that it solves, that I see and kind of I deal with builders, is kind of there's three main ones. So the first one is it actually helps solve visualization challenges. So when you're, planning something and you're trying to think, what do I want to put in what room? Or if you've got like a niche space, renders are actually great at helping to bring to life that space, so you can actually see it before you even kind of start digging, and that's when it gets expensive. Whether you have like I know an example that we have where they came to us wanting a render, and they had this barn door underneath the stairs because they didn't want that underneath nook to show. But when they brought it to life, it was really cluttered, and that it was really expensive door that they ended up saving money on because they just didn't put it in and just built in cupboards, and it looked so much nicer because it was like really open. So I think being able to to do that before you start construction kind of makes those changes now to make the less delays and also save you a bit of money is an important one. The second one can be marketing off the plan can be really, really tough. Renders solve the problem of how do I market something that doesn't actually exist? That's when we talk about renders, people are often using them to pre-sale houses, whether it's the same house over and over again, or whether it's a new spot, but you want to actually try and pre-sale market it. That's terrific as well. And both of them lead to the most important factor of that emotional buy-in. It's amazing how, how much you fall in love with a property based on a render. So, plans can often feel really cold and transactional. I don't know how much exposure the everyday person has to a floor plan, but it's really hard to see, and really hard to fall in love with because you're looking at stairs, whereas maybe if you're looking at render and this beautiful staircase and it's well lit and there's a chandelier there. I dream big when I think of I dream of my future house. So if I go a little bit rogue with what I'm dreaming, it's just, it's a dream. We're allowed to dream. So I think those one as well, renders really actually can help people fall in love. And that's what you really will want to do. They're not going to be able to fall in love when they arrive to the property because by the time they arrive, it's probably already built and they probably already own it. So how do you emulate that when it's not been built?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think some of the things you explained there is probably helpful for people doing renovations or buying and selling homes and that kind of stuff. From a builder's perspective, what I'm imagining is during the sales process, is that if they can help the customer visualize what it might look like at the end, and it sounds like they can make decisions around certain changes and things like that visually. I think that's going to have a huge impact on the early stages of a sales process. But how much information do they need to build out a render like that so they can have that impact?
Yeah. So with our renders, typically it's the CAD or the PDF files. CAD is always king, same with DWG, just because it's easier for modelers to work with. And a rough design board, if you've got the exact specifics of what you want to create, great. If you don't, we just kind of need a rough design board or the landscaping plan or even some fixtures and finishes, and then we can kind of build it from there. Different render companies work in different ways, and that's why I think technology is so incredible because there are so many companies out there and you can kind of find one that actually works best with you and your marketing team. But being able to, even just take something as the floor plans and a rough mood board and turning it into a furnished, almost photo is such an incredible way, like you said, of getting those, it's not there and, not everyone has the luxury of having a show home or a design center that they can come to. So being able to show that as well really kind of helps with those objections of what if, or this is really expensive, I don't know. You just get them to fall in love with it.
How else are you seeing builders use the renders in their sales and marketing strategies?
Well, it really depends. So I think it really comes down to do they have that show home? But I think a lot of the times I see builders use an exterior render and a floor plan. And that's great because you kind of get to see a 3D floor plan of everything and you get to see the exterior. And that's really good when you are doing renders on a budget. And that's the great thing about where we are right now is there is an option for every budget. So you don't have to be spending tens of thousands of dollars on this. You really can have different options that suit you. So that's kind of the option one. Option two, and the one that we love to see is interiors as well. So people often forget that interior is actually the biggest selling point of the house. So when people are looking at buying a house, they're looking at the kitchen and the primary bedroom. They're the two factors we want to see. So option two is almost like an exterior and then one or two interiors can make them fall in love and that floor plan. But then you've got the options where if it's the same house you're selling over and over again, maybe you're getting all the key spots, two exteriors, the floor plan, and maybe a 360 because you're going to use it again. Again, it really comes down to how they're using it. So is it a spec home or is it a house we're maybe going to sell multiple times? Or is it actually something that we're just doing the one time, so we want a smaller purpose? But then the great thing about it is you can use it with your clients, but you can also use it in marketing as well. And so being able to showcase your expertise online, I think is really vital as well. And people forget that, I look at real estate listings all the time. And when the new build listings come up and they're not great, it actually makes me question. I'm like, okay, is there something wrong with this property if there's only one photo or like one floor plan? Like, how can we actually leverage our technologies without spending too much money to actually make your expertise shine through? And that's what we want to do with renders, is not only showcase the property, but also you as the builder.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense from like a spec builder's point of view because they've got a lot of repeatable components and stuff, right? Most of our audience are probably custom home builders, remodelers, and things like that. How do you see them using it effectively in their marketing, for example, on their website and stuff like that?
I think it's really like key as well, being able to show the before and afters. So, if you're only doing it's a custom home and maybe you only want to get one render done just so you can have it for yourself. Or if you're actually working with like potentially a buyer, like you're working with a client who doesn't have that much experience with new constructions. So being able to reconcile the fact that you may be working with someone who doesn't understand. So we have some custom home builders use it when there's key objections or whether you're trying to prove, hey, I actually don't think that kitchen layout works. Let's try this. And you're not getting that. When you look at a floor plan, it is hard to see. Whereas if you can actually paint the picture with a render as well, and then you can use it for yourself. So people use it on their websites, use it on their social medias, compare the render to what happened afterwards as well. That's kind of always a fun. I always love stumbling upon those as well. And then in other instances, just really trying to leverage the technologies to overcome those objections.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you feel like does it tap into the emotional side of the buyer better than a floor plan or just a general sales conversation?
Yeah. So selling off the plan home really has its challenges in trying to sell the dream, which is what we're trying to do. We're trying to sell someone a
Mm.
dream. And when you present a floor plan, all they see is these lines and the price tags. So when we're selling the dream, we want them to fall in love with it. So I want people to kind of consider virtual renders as a little bit of a time machine, giving the home buyer a really big glimpse into their future lifestyle. So they can picture themselves hosting family dinners in the kitchen, enjoying that cozy night in the living room, and waking up to the beautifully designed bedroom. So really what we want to do is actually take people into the future, and a vivid realization can really make it easier for buyers to actually see it as their home, which is really the big thing. Is once they see it as their home, I think they're way more likely to commit or just agree. And that's to be said for custom home builders, for specs as well. Either one of those, kind of that emotional buy-in is really the thing that gets people to cross the line when they're having those not crisis, but when they're debating. When I debate my 8-bedroom house, the big thing for me is the price tag, but the renter can get me over the way. It's just the bank maybe for me.
Well, actually, that's a good point. Like the pricing, that would have been my next question. Is that's a really tricky situation because you can develop this beautiful render with everything, all the bells and whistles that someone wants in their home, their 8-bedroom house, but they might only have the budget to build a 3-bedroom house. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't get to that point building out a render 8 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, but how can a builder really handle that conversation and building out the renders effectively so they're not misleading the client or going down a path where there's this beautiful looking home that they can't build under the price that they need to.
Well, I think that's the beauty of, when you show renders, typically if it's a consultation, it's probably not the first thing that people are
Yeah.
seeing. It's
Yeah.
probably you've had those conversations, so you've kind of qualified them a little bit. But then I also think that, we have this great example and I love it so much. It's a 360 virtual render. And what we're able to do with a 360 is layer different options. So option one is you can kind of do different layouts. So the cool thing is about it is if, we want to show them the full 8-bedroom, great, you can. But then you can also change it. So then option two could be, this is an open plan layout. It's only maybe got 3 bedrooms or things like that. So there's actually ways that you can actually stack that technology on with each other. Or, maybe we're showing people option A, which is the full bells and whistles, but here's option B. It still is cool, but it's actually going to save you. So it really, again, comes down to your marketing budget. How many times are you using that floor plan? If you're using that floor plan again and again and again, maybe we're actually doing the full kit out package where there's option A, option B, option C, whether it's just, you maybe are only going to sell that house 3 or 4 times, or it's a custom, getting the renders done and in key areas. So then later down the track, if, you want to say, oh, I remember that cool property, would something like this actually suit you better? Then you've actually got that render anyway.
Yeah, that's true. I guess it helps you illustrate where they could shift things around to save on cost potentially, or, if they don't want to, if they want to spend as much as they can, then you can also add as much as you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the cool thing about like where we are now is that back in like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, the only people that were able to afford 3D renders were the big, big companies, right? We've made like the technology that's changed means that renders are so much more accessible to everyone. And there's different ways to make them better. Obviously you're going to pay more for the ones that literally look like a photo. But even if your budget is a 2D option, like our 2D renders at the moment are 96 US for a 2D render. It takes about 2 weeks to turn around. And that's obviously it's not 3D, but it's colored in. It does everything that we want to do. The 3D I think is still better because it kind of takes you down that, oh, it's a photo or it's real or that's my driveway type situation. But it makes it accessible to everyone, not just like the big companies that have the budget to be spending millions on renders.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. What are some of the challenges from getting that realistic looking render so that, it does actually have all of the benefits that you've been talking about?
This is one also changes with technology. So in 2024, I can kind of give you some tips. I do think the biggest challenges we face are time and money constraints because renters are quite expensive, but they can also sometimes be a little bit of a resource strain, especially when you're getting them done for the first time. Working with a new company, probably got someone who is really working hard to get these renders perfect. So time and money is always a big one. Inconsistencies with renders as well, especially if you're not using a company, you may be going between different artists as well. They kind of have their different flares. But I would say these are my biggest tips to making renders look the best. So one, make sure your render is not flat. It's actually quite off-putting and can really get kind of people distracted. So when I say a flat render, what comes to mind is, I don't know if you guys have that much experience with renders, but when you see a render and the landscaping is beautiful and it just looks like the house has been like stuck on like a sticker. So it is just like super flat. Now, flat renders is, I guess, another way of saying 2D renders, but when the exterior and the trees and everything are so lifelike and you've just got this kind of stuck on, it's really off-putting and it makes it really distracted because it's a bit like, what's going on here? So we want to make sure that if it's going to be a proper 3D, everything is 3D, not just the background. And then another one is we want to make sure that the scene fits. Now, I'm not going to go into too much technical detail about renders because one, we know what looks pretty and we don't. Two, I'm not the best person to technical renderings. I'm good for the first 70%, but that last 30% when it's modeling, it's not me. But we have lots of people at our company that is, but I'm more of the, let's talk about the general tips, right? So when we talk about a scene, we want to make sure that everything fits. So like I said earlier, we have clients in 120 different countries, but we're Australian based. I've seen renders in the past where, not ours, but I know that that's not the right scene because they've got Australian eucalyptus trees in a house that's in America. I know that those don't exist. We know that those trees don't exist in other countries. They're very specific to, say, Brisbane or Sydney, wherever you may be based. So making sure everything in the scene fits. So it could be down to the detail in the landscaping, which is why we like an actual landscaping plan from you. And we also need to know the address if you've got it, because if we can have a rough address, we can actually go and see what the landscaping looks like. So it's a bit of a tip out there for any builders that, maybe using spec houses in different locations. A big one pops to mind is maybe Arizona to, say, New York or things like that. Their landscaping is going to be very different. So making sure that we can use those renders again, but let's make sure the exterior landscaping fits. Same as well, no, you're not going to see too many houses in, say, Brisbane, Australia have a fireplace. So, I mean, they can, but they're not going to get used much. So that, I think they're my two tips here is in that one. And then another big one is people in renders. They're usually more used in commercial real estate as they're kind of really designed to show scale. People are really, really, really hard to model, super hard to model. So that's actually a big giveaway as well. And when you watch movies I don't know, it's The Postman Express, or no, what is it? There's a Christmas movie out there that Tom Hanks starred in. And everyone was like, what's going on? And it's because the faces were so it was trying to mimic a person, but the face wasn't moving the way it's meant to, because we know how humans are meant to interact. So I would say people in renders, unless you're trying to do it for scale or a big, like, kind of residential commercial purpose, I would say avoid them. Where there's also this tale of the same person being used again and again in renders. So that was a big one as well, because she kind of, I think if you type in like the Little Red Riding Bag story, it comes up, and there's all of these big firms were using the same render company and they were using the same people. So then it kind of popped up in a few as well. So if you're doing residential real estate, I'm going to say in the houses, no people, but that's like a little bone to pick with me. I'm just like not the I'm not a people, like a promoter in renders. And then the last one I think really kind of fits to it is the light source. Every object must have a shadow. No ifs, no buts. If there is a light source, there has to be a shadow because someone's blocking it. There's always like some blockage. So that I think is a big one. That can be kind of taken to virtual staging and things like that as well, is that light source really matters. So if you're ever like confused about why does this look not 100% natural, I think shadow is a big, big one. Making sure that, the couch has the appropriate shadow. I did say that was the last one, but I do have two more. Materials and textures as well. So making sure that, if it's a brick, we're not making it flat. We are making it a bit rugged. And also the fact that imperfection is kind of perfection in this world. If you make it too perfect and you've got 85 bricks and they're all the exact same, well, that's probably not realistic. We all know that they have kind of slight texture differences and, things like that. So they're kind of, I think, the big ones to look out for. Really just making sure that there is the light source, I think, is like the big one as well. I'll forgive you if you want to put people in there. That's fine. But yeah, light source and the imperfection is perfection, I think, are the two big ones.
Yeah, cool. Just as you were saying that, I think you were essentially answering this question by talking about the detail that you put into a realistic render. But with the way that AI is accelerating and how images are getting generated at such speed, and like that's improving day on day on day, where do you see this space going in the next 12 to 18 months? And how does a realistic render that you're talking about now compare to an AI generated one in the future?
Right now, I would say it's not there. And I don't say that because I work for a business that it's not AI operated. I say that out of like everything I just talked about light source and imperfection being perfection. The AI images I've seen for renders, they're pretty cool, but I wouldn't be using them to sell potentially $1 million house. We're not there at the point of it being a resource like you can leverage for that. I
Yeah.
think in 12 to 18 months, there will be definitely some advancements. I think where it's going to start is with virtual staging. So virtual staging, for people that don't know, is a kind of more of a real estate tool, but how do you stage kind of a photo with fake furniture? So you can kind of showcase everything we want to showcase in a render, but it's actually built, right? So I think that would be the first one where the technological advancements will kind of catch up with it. Right now, the light source is a big one with the AI virtual staging and renders I've seen. That's not really there yet. And I think that flatness is not, there's just a few things that right now renders still need a human. That is kind of apparent. I kind of keep my eye up to date with the render companies that are doing AI, and they're pretty cool. But again, I wouldn't be using it. Maybe in 18 months, and AI is going to catch up with us so quickly. So maybe in 18 months will be a different story. But for right now, I think for a 3D human edited render, it's not actually that much more expensive than, say, an AI render right now. So I would be kind of protecting yourself with your marketing right now. But in 18 months, I do think it's going to get to a point where this, at least some parts of the design aspect as well. And again, I'm not the best person to talk about like the back end for how complicated it is to render something, but it is such a time consuming process. That's why most render companies take 2 to 3 weeks, if not more, because it is so time consuming and really needs this big, big tech behind it and these big drives and everything like that. So I think it's getting there. It will come eventually, but not right now. And if you want to prove me wrong, you'll have my email address. So please, I'm always down for a conversation where it proves me wrong. But I think right now I'm right. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. And I think to your point, we don't know. 18 months is a long time, especially with how fast it's moving, but we'll watch and see.
Yeah, we'll watch and see.
Okay, so I guess the question on my lips for the whole interview, and I'm sure it's on the builders out there. What does it actually cost to get a 3D render done with Box Brownie? How long would that take to get done? So the 2D you said was 97 USD. Talk to me about 3D.
Yeah. So 3D, you're looking at 280 US dollars. So I think that converts to 350 AUD. I do apologize. It's been a while since I've been home. So my Australian pricing is like there, but not.
And depends
Yeah.
on
So
the
280
conversion rate, obviously. But
on the
yeah,
day. Well, the good
yeah.
news is that like we actually don't change it day by day, so it stays at that price, which I would love.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I said, I live in London and I work for an Australian company, so it'd be really beneficial to me if the banks did that when I got paid. They don't, so we're generous, more and more generous than the banks. But yeah, so 280 USD for a 3D render, and it can take anywhere between 2 and 3 weeks. If you've got more renders in the one project, it will take a little bit longer than that. But what I love about our way of doing it is you get 3 drafts. So it's a very collaborative process. And I do think that actually helps because at the end of the day, we're trying to bring your vision to life. So the 3 drafts, the first one is it's a clay model draft. So basically, we want to look at the spacing. How have we done bringing your house to life in terms of the actual model? The second one is kind of a first color. So it's like lightly washed. We've made some changes based on your feedback. And then the third version is just before we actually go put it through the CGI and do like the final finishings. So it's more of like a high definition kind of version of, okay, this is what it's going to look like, but we still have to do that last step of actually like doing the complete render. So that's for a 3D render. We also offer 360 renders, virtual tours. So if you want to do the hotspot as well. And then we also offer 3D floor plans. So what I think I love about what Box Brownie does is it is a la carte. So you very much can pick and choose what options you want. We don't do packaging. Like we can give you a package, but it's just going to basically be like me picking the different options. So it's not like you're locked into a package. And it's a pay as you go. So you're not going to have to like sign up to a really expensive render company. And then after one or two, if you say, oh, this actually isn't working for me, that's also fine. So it is designed to be kind of, you guys are at the forefront. We're working with you to bring it to life because the other day we're bringing your vision to life. And then what I will say is what we ask for is, like I said earlier, CAD files are great because it just makes it a bit easier to model. And then a design and a landscaping board. So we kind of know what to go off. If you want to give us every single detail you can, that's fine. That's perfect. We will bring it to life. If you don't know and you just actually want to see what it looks like based on that, we can work with that as well. We just kind of need a few of those like a rough guide, and then we can bring it to life that way as well.
Yeah, cool. I mean, it's a pretty cost-effective way, to be honest, for a builder to visualize, what they do. Obviously, they have photography and all that kind of stuff, but in their marketing, if they wanted to get a couple of examples like this done, it would make a lot of sense. And then if they're going to be using it in their sales process with actual clients, then just build it into the pricing.
Yeah, 100%. And you can build it into pricing, but then, like I said earlier, you can actually market yourself pre-sale during the construction process as well. And that's where we can tie in photos, we can kind of bring it to life that way, or post. And whether that's, whether it's a particular house you're trying to sell, or just marketing yourself, I think as well is quite a key one. So, we talk a lot about how photos and your online presence really actually ties back to your expertise and flair as a builder. And so, if you are building these beautiful, beautiful houses and have 5 really bad photos, it does actually speak to, okay, there's a bit of a disconnect there. So really what we want to do is kind of connect the whole marketing process and make it a little bit more seamless.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Alannah, thanks for coming on the show today and sharing everything about 3D renders. Any final advice for the builders out there listening?
No people. No, I'm kidding.
No people in your
I feel
renders,
like
yeah.
I'm going to no people. No, I'm going to die by the hail. No, I just think if you ever need any advice or some questions, please feel free to send it our way. The good thing is about being in 120 countries, we see so much of what the other world is doing, and it is really hard to keep up with the technology that's changed. And, as we just talked about AI, maybe in 18 months, this entire conversation is redundant. We're going to have to get me back on so we can unpack that. But yeah, so trying to keep up to date with everything is important, but also a bit overwhelming sometimes. So doing your research is important. But I also think that ties back to do your research to find a company that really works for you. Now, I think we're the best. So obviously I'm going to say hit me up, let's have a chat. But if the service doesn't work for you and there's 10 other companies out there that might, great. At the end of the day, what I want to see is better marketing and better renders. So find something that works for you and have a bit of fun with it. Like, I see so many different renders that maybe what they'll do is they'll do like a render and then like they'll do like a Christmas render or things like that. So obviously the budget may not allow for it all the time, but that's the beauty of it being a la carte. And like even 2 or 3 renders on your website, say that's 1,000 US and it maybe gets you 2 or 3 clients, you're really not going to stress about that $1,000, hopefully.
Yeah, of course. Well, if anyone is interested to find out more, boxbrownie.com. We'll add that to the show notes. But otherwise, Alannah, thanks so much for coming on today.
Oh my gosh, thanks for having me. I look forward to working with everyone. And yeah, thanks for having me, Will.
No worries. A big thank you to our listeners wherever you are in the world. If you like the show today, please subscribe to Professional Builders Secrets on your platform of choice. And if you're feeling generous, leave us a review. But until next time, have a great day.